Hey, what's up, guys? This is Agent from the Comeback Sports Podcast, and this is Season 4, Episode 2. We got a jam-packed filled episode as usual. Joining me today is my good friend Marcella, and we're going to be talking about soccer, some women's soccer along with that, some Valentine's dating tips, and some anime recommendations, and much more, so stick around. Now for your quote of the week. It's not always what you say that matters. Sometimes it's what you don't say. So, Marcella, what does that quote mean to you?
I guess the first thing I kind of thought of that I thought to me is you can say, especially like when you're angry at someone or upset with someone or something like that, sometimes it's like the things that you hold back maybe that keep yourself from saying like in the moment out of anger, and like realizing how that can affect a person is more impactful and more important than just kind of letting it all out in the moment. What about you, AJ?
Kind of like more of self-control in a way?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
I think so.
That's good perspective. To me, it's like you're right. You kind of do need self-control because you will say something you probably really don't mean because you're in the spur of the moment and you're maybe frustrated or you're overly excited about something, and it's not really true what you're saying because you're overwhelmed with emotion. Which is why sometimes you can't really make decisions based on emotion, whether it's personal decisions or work-related decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a good take. So those of you who don't know who Marcella is a friend of mine, and we used to work together. We worked very closely. Our departments would work together on projects, and we got really close over the year. And she's a big fan of the show. She has seen pretty much most of the episodes, and I thought, why not have her on? I mean, she is super knowledgeable of soccer. She even coaches soccer, which we'll get into that. So, Marcella, what's going on with you? I heard you are starting a new job, actually.
Yes, so me and AJ previously worked together in our old writer's block, but I just recently kind of pivoted my career, kind of what AJ was speaking to, and that I noticed my like passion and what I kind of wanted to do as far as in like kind of lining up my marketing knowledge too. All of that was kind of leading me towards more involving myself further with coaching. Especially in soccer, since kind of I grew up playing that, went to college for it and everything too. And so now I'm coaching at a youth nonprofit soccer club, and then I'm also working with a coaching contract under a coaching contracting company to kind of see how we can promote more grassroots programs for children. So very excited.
Yeah, she kind of gets more of like she's in more of the business side, but still doing the thing that she started out doing first, which was coaching. So it's really cool because not a lot of people can say they can see both sides of how an industry works.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, not to mention, I guess I always felt like kind of conflicted originally in how I wanted to go about my career path, and that like maybe I always thought like I'd have one job and then like hopefully be able to coach part-time, but now it's nice to be able to like combine them both into one and have like one dream job where it's all like lines up together pretty seamlessly. So which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. That is great. So transitioning into the topic, let's talk about more of the coaching side, what you do since you've been doing it for so long, I believe a couple years?
Yeah, so I've been working with this club for about like 2 years, maybe a little bit more, but then I've been I coached rec soccer and then also like volunteered for my little sister's team, which I don't know if really counts, but I was doing that for several years before too. So yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah, in terms of like the age range, who do you work with the most along with boys or girls?
Yeah, so I would say that by now I work mostly with the youth girls, although I've kind of had experience working with like high schoolers, boys and girls, mostly with youth girls. U8 to U10 are most of the teams I take on, which means like anyone under the age of 8. So the youngest I've worked with is 6, and then anyone turning 10. But I've done like girls who are already 10 turning 11 and older than that too, and I've even coached like my sister's team once, which was pretty like different because she's 16. So
yeah, so you had the variety of ages.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer, I guess?
That's a good question. I think the coaching the different ages, like there's I guess pros and cons of any sides. I really enjoy coaching the young ones just because you kind of get them started in getting like the love of the game for it right away. So a lot of the work we do with the younger ones is all technical, kind of trying to develop them is an individual as best as you can, because you can't really play as a team if you can't really do those things on an individual level first. And so that's pretty cool. Not to mention they play a smaller size field, 7v7. So a lot of times if your team is good at that age, it's more so because like the individuals are good. And then the older you get, it's cool because you can start talking about more tactical stuff. And then they play 11v11 on the field, and then it's more like what can your team do as one unit. So I think I prefer doing the younger ages, kind of starting them out, but both ones have their advantages.
Yeah, with the younger age, it's kind of more focusing on like the fundamentals of soccer versus the older ages. As you mentioned, it's you teach them strategy involved and kind of understanding it for when they play soccer elsewhere. Maybe it's high school or club team outside of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention, like, a lot of what they learn in the early ages, they, like, build off of at each age. So from U8 or U9, U10, they do 7v7, then they move on to 9v9, then 11v11. So, like, each stage, as long as they're hitting all the marks for what they should know, then by the time they get to 11v11, they're not kids who, for instance, don't know how to, like, switch the field or don't know how to cross or anything. If you get them all at the right spots at the right time for what they need to learn, then like by the time they get to the end, they're not missing anything.
It's a progression essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kids that are starting young, the plan is to get them prepared for each stage throughout their career per se. Do you in terms of the parents, like, is the interactions with parents different versus on different age groups?
Yeah, definitely. I never really noticed this when I was growing up as a player, but like now that I'm coaching and I have to kind of like work more with the parents and the kids and stuff, I noticed that obviously in the younger side, I like deal with the parents more. We have more like involved parents since they're younger. The older they get, the kids are more willing to be like autonomous and that kind of thing. Like if they want to know how to get better, they'll like high school girls especially, like they'll ask me directly, what do you think I could do to get better? But like the younger girls, like or boys, the parents will typically ask me, oh, like what do you think my child needs to like get better, anything like that. And then we also host one-on-one meetings, which is a little different than what most clubs do, but we host one-on-one meetings at the end of our fall season to be able to, like, any kid who signs up, we can tell them what they're doing too. So but yeah, overall, younger kids' parents for sure are more involved.
Yeah, but overall, there's communication, whether it's a parent or the actual player themselves, but there's just more communication at the younger level because, kids don't know what's going on. They just probably want to go out there and have fun.
Yeah.
The parents are probably like, oh, I want to make sure that they're still learning while having fun, versus the older kids, they may be thinking, well, okay, I kind of know what I need to work on. Let me confirm with coach, or let me just kind of get any feedback. Because kids at the older age are kind of more aware of things versus when they're younger.
Definitely. And like they're supposed to be, we have team managers, so like most of the communication facing the parents is supposed to be coming from the team manager and back and forth. But a lot of times in the younger age, they'll kind of like skip the team manager and go straight to me, which makes sense too if they're asking like soccer related questions. But for sure.
Right. Yeah, I always wonder because when I was a kid, I played baseball and I did play a little bit of soccer. It was just more, it was like a little club soccer that was like a very common if you were, not super like dedicated to it, but it's still fun to do. And I always wondered like how involved my parents actually were. But they're involved in terms of getting me signed up and make me practice or go like the batting cages to work on my baseball skills. But I always wonder how involved they were in terms of communicating with the coaches themselves. Like maybe they were asking for feedback, like, hey, what can AJ do to be on first base more, or what do you think we should teach him in terms of improve his batting swing? So I always wonder. I never really got a chance to ask them because, I'm a big runner, so I didn't really care too much about soccer or baseball versus running. Because by the time I was running, I was in high school. And I was kind of at that stage where I was directly talking to my coach for tips on how to be a better runner.
Yeah, for sure. And I always thought about too, because I was thinking about while you were mentioning that too. I was like, I wonder if there was like a difference between boys and girls as far as like parent involvement. I think because I work more with girls, I tend to see the parents asking more from that side. Although in the time that I worked with boys, like had them for full seasons, I didn't really get as many questions. But which is weird because if anything, like I found that when I'm coaching, the girls are actually really good listeners and tend to like pick up things more quickly. I think it might probably has to do with the fact like maturity level, they do that a little bit quicker. And then the boys would be the ones who are like very talkative, like kind of all over the place, a lot of energy, and it's like harder to get their attention. But then so you would think they'd have the more questions, but or at least the parents would. But I think I noticed boys tend to do more like for girls, soccer tends to be, especially in the early ages, such a social sport. So if, like, for instance, if a girl comes to the club, they usually don't come alone. They'll like bring a friend with them too, so they have someone there to be comfortable with. Whereas like boys, they're willing to just like, if they like soccer, like maybe like you like baseball, they just join the team. They don't really care if they know someone on it or not. And then they'll work on that kind of stuff more home alone versus waiting till they come to practice with their friends too. So.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's a good take. I think girls, yes, they are more mature than boys, and they just, so by that logic, they also just have better social skills. So they're able to ask these questions that they bring to your attention. Boys, they're just like, oh, I just want to play. How can I play? Oh, they don't probably think too hard about it. And that was interesting. You told me that like some girls bring friends along, until they feel comfortable going by themselves. I guess I'm not sure. I never really thought of it that way, so that's interesting too.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it until I was coaching too. But like even when I think about when I was growing up and I was younger, a lot of my friends, if they were switching teams or anything like that, they'd take someone else with them, or like they'd move to a team where they already knew girls. Most of them typically didn't go somewhere where like they didn't know anyone. So.
Cool. When there are times when Marcella gets busy with soccer, she has to leave town for the weekend, and usually it's like a Friday. I say, where's Marcella? Oh, she's coaching out of town. Oh, well, that sucks. So tell me about some experiences you have, like going on like road trips with the team. Like, did you have to get like a charter bus, or was it vans? How was the whole lodging situation coordinated?
Yeah, so actually I would say for club soccer now, we don't typically like all travel together. Even at the older ages, most kids will like go with their parents, so everyone kind of rides together separately. But when we do like hotel accommodations, a lot of times tournaments, like big tournaments, will do deals with the nearby hotels, so that like if you're going to play in the tournament, you have to stay at one of these hotels, but you just like pick one. So like most of the time when we do accommodations, we pick up group packages, so all the girls or boys will have rooms together, and then that's cheaper for them too, so they're all in the same area. And so then they'll do team dinners and stuff like that, even if they all traveled separately. I think for the most part, as far as busing, when I did that, and I know other people do that, it's like more common like at the collegiate level, I'd say, traveling together and stuff. But yeah, that was pretty cool. I think as so far, and I'm working with younger girls too, so we might not do like the really big youth soccer club tournaments around, but we've been to Wisconsin, Indiana, and then we went to Minnesota too for the USA Cup. That was probably the farthest we've traveled so far.
Yeah. I think you told me you went to Mall of America that week.
Oh, we were going to, but then like it was weird because all of our games were spread out like at really weird times, so they were all like kind of in the middle of the day, which was nice because we didn't have to wake up super early like traveling from out of the state. But then it kind of stunk because you didn't really have enough. You had lots of time to kind of sit around and do nothing, but you also didn't have enough time to like go to the city and then walk around the mall for hours and then come back for your game.
That reminds me of a time I was in a track club in high school, and we had the option to ride by ourselves. I didn't want to go with the team the night before because I had a graduation party it was my own graduation party. So I was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to ride with the team, so I'll be riding by myself the following morning. So what happened was I accidentally overslept, and I missed my first race of the day.
Oh, no.
I show up, and my coach is just pissed. He just doesn't even talk to me. He just gives me the death stare. He's like, you better do good the next race. Thankfully, he got over it, but it just reminded me, like, yeah, some of them drive separately. Like, oh yeah, I did that once, and then I missed it.
Oh, I think that happened to me once or twice too, where I just like, I think once in high school I like slept in too much, and like luckily it was a home game, so like by the time I got there the game hadn't started or anything. But then that happened to me in college too. It wasn't for a game, but it was for practice, that like I overslept and missed a practice, and then because of that, like they knew I didn't do it purposefully, obviously, but since I was like commuting to school, I ended up having to miss like the first, like I didn't start the next game for it. I had to like wait 15 minutes, so it wasn't that bad, but it still kind of stunk just like sitting there, and you're like, ooh, I could be out there.
I can't remember, where did you play in college?
I played at Roosevelt University in Chicago. So if anyone who doesn't know that, if it's like right in front of Grant Park it's kind of by Columbia, Columbia College? I suddenly forgot the name for it.
Maybe.
Columbia, DePaul, and then it was by Robert Morris too, but they just merged with Roosevelt, and then by the School of the Art Institute, Chicago.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's by a whole group, and that is not, and I don't know if I said this already, but it's not NCAA. That's actually NAIA, which is the conference for smaller schools. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had friends that played sports in that division. It was soccer, I believe. I want to say Iowa Central is a school. I could be wrong, though. It might be Division III. I have to confirm with my friend. But yeah, I am aware of that division in terms of sports, because I did have friends that ran in that division too.
The more you know. Yeah, I think we mostly played, I think the furthest for our conference, because I think we were like the Chicagoland conference or something like that. So the furthest we went was maybe Indiana. But for the most part, all of them were around here. So.
Okay. I gotta check my notes real quick. Just to kind of share a little bit of my experiences with coaching. I did do a little coaching in college, but the nature was a little different because I was coaching college kids as a college kid. The reason why is because I was in a running club in college, and they just pretty much needed a body to kind of facilitate the workouts. And I stepped in like, hey, I can do that, because I actually like creating training plans for runners. Because I like to look and actually have a book. It's a running book. You probably can't see it, but I have a running book that my friends have recommended to me, and I look online. So I like that part of it, just strategizing of how to like help people be faster runners. So that experience was interesting, because like I didn't really treat anybody as like, as someone who reports to me. It was just more like a teammate I'm helping out be better at running.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So, yeah, it was an interesting dynamic.
I was going to ask because I know, so I used to play on the U23 team for the club I currently coach at, and then I actually used to play at this club too, so I kind of went from like player to coach. But the U23 team is basically, it's like a summer league team designed to like any girls who's playing in college who want something to do over the summer before they go back, so they're not just sitting for several months. They end up playing on that team. I actually just aged out of the team, and the other coaches I work with were wondering if I'd want to coach it too. And I was just thinking, I know personally I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, that feels so weird to like coach people that I played with, because I'm like, I guess my thought process is of like, would they take me seriously as a coach if they were someone they played with? What if they'd be like, well, she did these things better than me, but I did these things better than her, or like I've seen her be like goofy or something, like how do I take her seriously? So I was wondering, how did you manage that part of it?
It was interesting, because I kind of had the same process too. Because if you get to know me, I'm kind of a little goofy, a little awkward sometimes too. So kind of I didn't want to come off as assertive, because at the end of the day, I'm not a real coach. I'm just your teammate trying to help you. I kind of think of it that way, and be open to what people have to recommend, but still be firm about. I appreciate your recommendations. However, I see we should still follow this portion of the training plan, but we can maybe apply that in a different day. So just being open about my recommendations or my strategies kind of help the relationship. And at the end of the day, I just needed someone to just like, my job is just to make sure they have workouts, or I can facilitate a time where everyone can go and get the track reserved. I kind of just look at that, like I'm not trying to make someone an Olympian champion or something. So it was just kind of learning not to take myself too serious about it. Definitely made it a little easier, more fun, because at the same time I also got to run too. Like I literally be facilitating the workouts while doing the workouts. So that made it fun too, because I'd be so bored if I just show up to practice, told them to do this, and just watch them.
Yeah.
So it was nice to actually be in the workouts themselves.
Yeah, I think not focusing so much on the dynamic, which was my problem, and you kind of just thinking as it more like you were saying, like facilitating the thing. Because I do like creating like coaching plans and like focusing on areas that my team needs to work on, put it in a drill, and then once they kind of got the hang of it as like an isolated idea or concept or anything, and then putting it in like a game scenario would be kind of cool. So then kind of translating that to like the collegiate level would be really different just because there's so much more they're capable of doing. So that'd be fun. Just like thinking of it more as putting something in front of them to do, kind of someone to like hold them accountable, because I know not everyone has like, I guess, the willpower to be able to go and do like any sort of summer training by themselves, as opposed to like just like a little kid showing up telling them what to do. So
Do you have any thoughts you want to share about coaching before we go on to the next topic?
I guess I guess the biggest thing sometimes I think about was, I know growing up for me personally, I never really had any female coaches. And I think the one I did have was horrible, to say the least. Like, just horrendous. Like, when you have like a teacher who's so mean to kids and you can't believe they're a teacher. It was like that. And then and so it's like cool that I've just kind of been thinking about it. And then as like kind of trying to be just because, sorry, I cannot finish a sentence, but basically I'm saying it's kind of nice to be able to like be a little bit more of a representation for girls in that matter, for like as young as I'm coaching them, because then they kind of see a role model, someone who's been playing soccer, someone who's kind of taking it as far as I have. And then just because I didn't see that when I was younger, and I see it a lot more with like other teams I coach at that ages too, like more female coaches. So that's been pretty awesome as far as like coaching, and I hope that continues. I know in the professional level there have been more female coaches emerging too, so hopefully that continues.
Oh, well, I like that, because you're right. I think we do need more representation, not just soccer, but various sports. And I think that's slowly starting to become a thing, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's transition over to a headline. The U.S. women's national team, their newbies, gathered in the first camp of the year, preparing for the qualifying tournament, I believe, for the 2023 World Cup. So I guess some questions I have is, like, what can we expect with this team with all these new players that are on? Like, do you feel like they're going to be taking a step back for a little bit, or is it just going to be business as usual for the women's team that has won back-to-back World Cups?
Great question. So I think what we've been seeing in these past World Cups and past international tournaments is that like the women's the U.S. soccer team has always been like a powerhouse. Like, I feel like no one has been able to touch them for a really long time. And now as we've seen them starting to get like a little bit more comfortable at times, like that's when they've had games that have flipped, and people in other countries are starting to grow a little bit more in power. Like we saw that with England especially. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that all these other, especially European countries, tend to put a lot more into like academy programs for their professional teams, which kind of just means that like under their professional teams, they have like youth clubs playing at the different ages, and sometimes that'll, on the boys side, that tends to be paid for. So basically if a player is good enough, they don't have to pay for the program, their kit, their travel, everything gets paid for them. And other European countries have tended to invest in that more. And so we've seen over the years this big gap that the U.S. women's had against other countries is starting to be closing in. They're still at the top, but I think in this next World Cup, which will be in Australia, New Zealand, 2023 for the women, and then even in the Olympics 2024, that's going to be in France. We'll see that these are going to be a little bit more of like battles, and we might not see them win games as easily as before. At least overall.
Yeah. You mentioned that women's teams overseas are kind of investing more in academies and prep, overall prep, kind of like a grooming process. I think that kind of plays a role in just how popular soccer is outside of the U.S. Because it's so popular in terms of the men's side, with all these leagues going on in the men's side, that eventually starts to feed on or kind of latch on to the women's side of things, and which is why we are seeing a closer gap in terms of women's soccer. And I've kind of seen this with like basketball. Like I watched the Team USA play in the Olympics, the Summer Olympics, and we were expecting just blowouts, just like every Olympic game. The superstars of America just blow out the rest of the world, but it was a little closer this year, and it's nice to see that because there are gifted players all over the world. It's just a matter if they have good coaching and good preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, I guess if for girls use soccer girls use soccer has become so much more prevalent on the girls' side in the U.S. So I feel like now, anytime, like if you ask a young girl what sport she plays, a lot of times she'll mention soccer just because it's so popular here, which is great. But again, like we're not getting like the full-blown academy program treatment that other places are doing. So I think last I checked, there was only like 2 or 3 MLS programs for women's that were actually running academy teams, and even these are like new that are just coming up in the recent years too. So like putting in, I guess we've been relying so much on just like the natural popularity of kids wanting to play sports to kind of do that work for them on the Olympic level, but with more other countries like purposely investing in these kind of things now is why we're probably seeing like the difference in it.
So you sense more of a push?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Just kind of reading off the headline, a list of talent includes Trinity Rodman. She is the daughter of Dennis Rodman.
Yes.
And I believe, excuse me, she is one of the first ever to be called up as a 19-year-old for the team. Do you know much about her or any of the women that are new in the spotlight?
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit. So Trinity Rodman, I actually took a couple notes here just to make sure I didn't botch any of her awards. But she was, like you said, she was one of the youngest to be called up for the National Women's Soccer League here in the U.S. I think she was the second draft pick, and that was for Washington Spirit, which really worked out in her favor because then Washington Spirit went on to win the NWSL this year against Chicago Red Stars. And so you'll see here in like a lot of the players that were called out, I think this first camp has 25 players called up, not including some of like the big names that they already kind of know how they play, like Alex Morgan, Julia Ertz, Christian Press, Megan Rapinoe, players like that. But a lot of these new girls, some of them are completely uncapped. One of them being Trinity Rodman, so this is her first exposure to like national soccer. Ashley Sanchez, who is also on Washington Spirit, and I forgot the last player who is uncapped. But I think as far as like new talent, there definitely would be 2 players to watch because they were super. I don't know, they're just like an enigma together when they were playing on Washington Spirit. Trinity Rodman was playing as like their 9 or their forward, and then Ashley Sanchez was also playing in attacking positions, generally supporting her, but she had a really, really strong presence on the field. So I think those 2 will be players to watch. Not to mention Naomi Girma. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry, Naomi. She was also uncapped, and she was actually the number 1 overall draft pick for this 2021. So.
Yes, I do see that. Let's see.
And then that's as far as like new players coming in, who I think will add a lot to the team. And then of course, not counting maybe some of like the players that don't necessarily need to be at the camp. Lindsey Horan just won Player of the Year for the NWSL, and she's like any position you put her in as center mid, she just does crazy in. She's just a really talented technical player and a good eye for distribution. So I think she'll continue doing well. And Rose Lavelle, super creative, another center player. I think because I played in the center too, I tend to like gravitate towards the central players and watch them. Yeah. So Rose Lavelle, also a super creative player as a 10. I think she'll bring even more to this next round. Also, Mallory Pugh is kind of like the last go-around's Trinity Rodman in the sense that she was a new 19-year-old player pulled up and like really fresh. So I think now that she's kind of starting to step out of that like brand new player position and being more self-assured, especially you could see that with the Chicago Red Stars, as she was like one of their leading goal scorers, had a really good presence as a forward on the field. I think she'll kind of even continue growing more on the team and being seen as more as like a senior, or not a senior, but someone who's not brand new, who's like a presence on the field. So.
Yeah, we always kind of mention like the high profile stars that are on the team, which is good because if they won a World Cup, they can probably do it again if they keep playing.
Yeah.
One part of the that kind of interests me was we had defender Kelly O'Hara. She's 33 years old, and she has won the past 2 World Cups with the team. I think she has the most appearances within the players, 148 appearances.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good she is, which she is, that's why she's on the team. I really appreciate on all sports just veteran presence within teams, because you do need someone that's been in the spotlight multiple times, or at least been in the game for so long, to kind of mentor these young players that are coming in, especially this depth of talent. So you got to make sure you groom them in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably why in the last few World Cups they kept Carly Lloyd, for instance. When Carly Lloyd was getting a little bit older, she obviously recently retired too. So like people kind of wonder, well, why? Or Abby Wambach, the prior World Cup. But people kind of sometimes wonder, well, why are you keeping these older players and playing them like 20 minutes a game, maybe less? Well, because I think when you're in these games, like kind of like you were mentioning, when these games get kind of like frantic and people kind of lose their sense of play and they feel the pressure, it's players like these who have done it multiple times, who have been on like endless number of games they've appeared in, are the ones who can kind of bring the team back to set back in their style and not feel so pressured and actually just play.
Yeah, I mean, when they're on their field, their presence is definitely helps, and they can help. They can also just help facilitate, or just kind of be like a general on the field to make sure everyone's in line what they need to do.
Yeah, I thought it was actually kind of interesting that they were having Kelly O'Hara play in this camp again, just because, again, it's mostly to kind of get a feel for all the players, see how they're doing, and see who you want to pick up for the team. But like I say that, but then also players like I mentioned, Lindsey Horan, and then Rose Lavelle, they're obviously like stars on the field. They're so fun to watch, and they're here too. So it might not be anything to look into, but
yeah. So I guess in the big picture, is business as usual with Team USA?
Yeah, I think you can count on them to do well and make it far. It's kind of, as long as they hold up everything that they're doing, overall, it's just kind of wondering what other countries are doing and how much closer they're going to be, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So there's other factors that we can't consider just yet.
Yeah.
But we can expect closer matchups, as we've recently seen.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, especially when you've got like some of the best players on the world playing for other countries, like Maradona, Brazil. So.
It looks like they're training in Austin, which is probably a lot warmer than Chicago at the moment.
Yeah.
What was the temp today, like minus 14 or something?
I think so. I know yesterday they were talking about it being as close as to like negative 22. My sister was like very sad about it because apparently it has to be like negative 25 for school to get canceled or something like that. So
my girlfriend Jessie, she was upset that they didn't cancel school.
Oh. But yeah, I heard actually. I saw a video of them that they posted on Twitter where they were practicing for the beep test. I don't know if you know what that is, but
is that like the pacer test?
Yeah, it's kind of like a pacer test, basically. A little bit more difficult because you have to like you have to sprint in a certain number of seconds and it gets faster each time. But so like the pacer, but like not like kicked up a notch in terms of like how fast each level progressive. And there was like a video of them training in Austin, and they were having like a cold front, and so they're all like in their puffy coats like running it, which is so funny.
Yeah, they're not used to it. Cool. I appreciate you taking time to talk about soccer, because to be honest, soccer's not my sport, and it's really nice to hear someone who's an expert at the coaching and just the general knowledge of soccer level to kind of inform me and kind of make me understand the game a little bit more. Appreciate that.
Of course, love to do it.
So let's kind of transition outside of sports, and we got 3 topics we want to talk about. Hopefully we'll get to at least 2 of them. We got about less than a half hour. I need to make sure I get dinner ready for tonight. So right now it is January 26, 2022. Next month is February. You know what that means? Valentine's Day is approaching. So Marcel and I are going to help helpless people that don't know what to do for their significant other in terms of tips for date and gift ideas. I just want to start off with one tip that I think applies to anyone. It's a special day, but it's not the only special day. So don't overthink it or stress yourself out too much, because there's other opportunities. And at the end of the day, your significant other will appreciate the thought that was brought into your idea. If they don't, you need to get a new person.
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes people will conflate Valentine's Day with needing something like a big grandiose display of affection, when really, as long as you do something that like shows that you care and shows that you're consider them like a meaningful relationship, then that'll get through.
Right. It's the thought that counts, believe it or not. I know
sure.
as cliche as it sounds, but if you put a little thought into it, listen to what they have said, if they like a certain food, maybe you should make it. So that goes into my first tip. A date idea would be maybe just an at-home meal. Make your significant other's favorite meal, or make something new together. Because if you make something new together, that's an opportunity for you guys to become closer together and take on a new challenge. Because sure, it may not be the prettiest meal, but it's the experience of doing it together is what makes it enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're like, while you're cooking something new together, you can always like, if you want to, your thought, I guess, ahead of what might be like a gift for them is maybe you make like a playlist or something that you guys can listen to while you're cooking, or you can prepare your meal and maybe set up like a little rom-com movie marathon to watch it too. All these like extra layers that kind of seem like nothing special. You kind of put it all together and suddenly it goes from, it feels meaningful like the night without having to do too much or stress yourself out. So.
Exactly. Do you have a tip you want to mention outside of this one?
As far as I guess since you went the at-home route, I can think of some stuff for like out of the house. So again, we kind of mentioned not feeling like you have to go too extravagant, but then sometimes it's kind of fun when I guess people for Valentine's Day picture like this like kind of cheesy Italian restaurant as far as like romance, which sometimes is kind of fun to lean into. So if you want to do that, especially if it's like your first time celebrating Valentine's together, that's like a fun route to go. Otherwise, it might be cool to kind of like find a brand new place or restaurant they've never been to that you think they might like, or go for some like indoor activity you guys can do together. So that'd be like, maybe there's like an indoor mini golf place, an arcade. You guys can take like cooking lessons together led by a chef directly. I would just say if you're going to do anything like that, I wouldn't wait to the last minute to book, since restaurants and like activities like that can go pretty quick.
Yeah, especially in this day and age where we can do things instantaneously in terms of booking. Like I can literally just pull my phone, push a couple buttons, and book something. Someone else could do that too. So you do have to prep a little bit more ahead versus what you would normally do, even if you are a timely person.
Yeah, for sure. And then I was thinking, kind of going along with what you mentioned earlier, is actually what I would say from a girl's perspective is like the biggest thing I would think when going along the men's route for shopping for them is that like really listen to what they ever mention that they want or need and get that for them. As opposed, I found that like if you kind of try to guess what a guy wants, then it's not really something he wants. But if it's like something they actually mentioned that they wanted or that they need, then they always end up liking it. I feel like a girl would like a homemade card, right? And I think a boy would too. But if you ever heard them mentioning like that they want a purple hoodie, like in passing sometime, then you should get that gift for them, because then it's like an easy way to get them a gift, but it also shows them that you listen to what they say. So.
Oh yeah, I mean something that I'd recommend is just listen to complain. Something you can learn a lot when you listen to complain.
That's true.
Yeah, like what Marcella said, like pay attention to the things that they may need. Maybe they need a new beard trimmer. Or maybe they need a new keyboard for their desk. Like their buttons keep sticking. Marcella had that problem once with her keyboard.
Oh yeah, the O.
She couldn't hit the O button on her keyboard. I don't know how she did it, because I feel like there's a lot of words that have the letter O.
It was so hard. And then like it would, like I had to tape it over, and then it'd still kind of pop off every time anyways, and I have to put it back on. It was horrible. And like even worse, because I was a copywriter too, so I was on that O button all day.
Yeah. But she survived. But like, yeah, if they have a favorite store that they go to, give them a gift card to the favorite store. I know, just take an example, like I've had roommates, they love to fish. So things that they would probably like is maybe a gift card to Bass Pro Shop if there's one in your area. Maybe if they're into music, maybe get a shirt of their favorite artist or band, or tickets to a sporting event or concert that they've been dying to go to. So yeah, just pay attention to pay attention to their needs, and pay attention when they complain, and you'll learn a lot of what you can get them for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, and then the one last thing, if for some reason it's like coming towards the end of February, you have no idea what to get, I noticed, I never knew this before, but I don't know if you agree with me, AJ, but like boys tend to put a lot of like knickknacks on their desks when they're in like the office.
Yeah, like what they call those things. They're not bobbleheads.
Oh, what the
God.
the ones with the big heads and they're all different. I forgot the name.
Oh,
of
one
it.
second. I want to look this up.
While he looks that up, I guess you would never think this, right? But I see them like put all these little like bobblehead looking thingies on their desks, or like fun little posters or different things like that. So if you kind of know things that they like, or like movies that they like, or
Funko
anything.
Pops.
Funko Pops. That's what it was. Okay.
I don't like how that sounds.
Yeah, but I wanted to say pop for some reason, and I was like, oh, I don't want to say it if I'm totally wrong. But if you know like a certain movie or character they like, or some sort of illustration that they like, a little poster they can hang, that's always like a good thing to add to, because it's such a simple gift. They can't dislike it because it's adding a little fun and color to their office space, and then they'll think of you every time they look at it. So
that's true. That's very true. One thing that I think is a kind of it's a little generic, a little cliche, but I think it gets the job done. Just if you're a guy, this is for guys especially, just nice little bouquet of flowers. It doesn't have to be roses. Believe me, it does not have to be roses, because you will overpay so much for roses, and you know what happens to those roses? They die. They die so quickly. I've learned this over and over again, that they will be buds for about a week. And about a weekend, they'll be just dead. So be a little creative with the flowers. Maybe get flowers that are her favorite colors, if you know what those are. Or just something with a lot of colors. Because they want to, your girlfriend or significant other, whoever, when they post those flowers, they want to like, oh, look how cool the flowers are. There are a lot of colors. It's so thoughtful. So think about that. Like, it doesn't have to be roses. It can just be a nice, pretty bouquet of flowers. If they like chocolate, box of chocolate too could work.
yeah, speaking as a girl, and especially if they say like, oh, you don't have to get me a gift, don't listen to them, get them a gift. At the very least, get them like flowers and chocolates, like AJ mentioned. And if you want, like I kind of said before too, like a homemade card, it always kind of goes a long way in showing how much you care for them.
My girlfriend made me a card. Oh. You can kind of see it.
Oh, it's right there.
Yeah.
Look at that beautiful coloring too.
Yeah, I love them.
But see, he put it up on his table because of how much he meant to him. So imagine the reverse. It's all the same. So.
Speaking of Valentine's gifts, is there a memorable Valentine's Day gift you got from your boyfriend?
Oh,
you don't have to share if you don't want to.
I was gonna say you're putting him on blast, AJ, because my boyfriend tends. This is gonna sound like such a red flag, but I promise, guys, he's like the nicest. He never gets me like holiday gifts. I think like romantic gifts like that, so like Valentine's Day or anniversaries. But then he'll usually like think about it later, and he'd be like, "I'm sorry, I didn't get you a gift. I should have gotten something." And then he'll get me like flowers and a homemade card and stuff like that. And I think that always was nice. Or he'll plan outings for us, I guess, rather than give me a physical gift. So like I love looking at houses, and he knows I like looking at like the architecture and stuff like that. So we planned a day where we would go bike riding at Oak Park and look at all the different historic houses. So that was pretty nice.
That's very creative.
Yeah, I thought so. I liked that a lot. That was a really fun day.
Yeah, that reminds me. Sometimes me and my girlfriend, when we buy each other gifts, it's not like tangible items that wrap in a box, here you go. Like example, like for Christmas, she wanted a trip. So this weekend actually, we're going to Milwaukee. So that's my Christmas gift to her. So we're excited for that.
Yeah, Milwaukee has so much fun things to do too. So that'll be a good one.
I like it. It's a city that's big enough to like do a lot of things, and it's not overly crowded either.
Oh, and then sorry, I forgot one more like gift stuff that I like just realized I use all the time. It wasn't Valentine's Day or like anniversary or anything, but it was for Christmas. He got me like this pillow pet and then this tie blanket that he like tied together himself with a bunch of different little corgis on it.
That's cool.
And it was so cute because he told me at the end he was like rushing to finish it because there's like I don't have this blanket with me, but if you guys could see it, there's like it's like really cut thin, so like there's a ton of things, so he had to get his whole family to start helping him at the end to be able to finish it in time. So I thought that was sweet. What about you, AJ? What's your favorite Valentine's gift or anniversary gift or anything like that you've gotten?
I got an Aaron Rodgers jersey for Christmas once.
Very nice.
Yeah, that was really nice of her. She had no business being a Packers fan. But yeah, the homemade cards, those are my favorite gifts from her because she has to not only color it and add cool designs, but she writes notes inside of them that are very lengthy and very thoughtful. So I appreciate those.
Yeah.
Enough of the sappy stuff. Let's go on to some anime.
The good stuff.
If you guys have been paying attention, me and Oscar talked about anime once, but Marcella is also an anime fan, and me and her are going to vibe a little bit on some recommendations. I'll kind of go through more of what's currently running, and then maybe some older anime, whether they're like within the last 10 years or old school. Either way, we'll give you the recommendations of what's currently trending and what has been a landmark of anime. Mm-hmm. So kind of get some examples I have, and Marcel can give her thoughts on these, and then include her ideas for recent animes is Attack on Titan, must watch.
Yes.
Demon Slayer, must watch.
Absolutely.
My Hero Academia, it's not a must watch, but it's very trendy and it's very popular across a larger, broader audience versus some of these other animes I'm going to list.
Well said.
And Jujutsu Kaisen is one that's super action-packed. And then Haiku is for the sports lovers that just like a good thrill when watching sports. Like, it made me want to learn how to play volleyball. It's crazy.
I was going to say that too. It's like that last one, Haiku, is like you watch it and then suddenly you're so motivated to put 110% to everything you do. Like the way they just like, it just reminds you like the highs and lows of high school sports, so to speak.
Oh my God. Did you do a Riverdale reference?
Yeah, it was. I never watched the show, but I just thought that part was funny. Like this guy, like this guy's talking about how he would push drugs for his Nana since he was 9-year-old. And then all Archie can say to him, so you've never experienced the highs and lows of high school football.
You never experienced the high and lows of high school volleyball, Marcella.
Yeah, clearly. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the show.
Oh, that's fine. All right, so yeah, to get back to that, what are your thoughts on the other animes that I listed?
Yeah, so ones that you haven't listed
or just listed.
Okay, Attack on Titan, phenomenal. The way this like show started and the way it ended up going is just crazy. The amount of growth the plot went, and like there's just conspiracy after conspiracy. Sudden characters completely flip around in terms of their storyline. Sacrifices are made. I would if like you want a show with a lot of depth in the plot, like that's the one to go to. That's for sure going to be a modern anime classic. Next one was
I got Demon Slayer.
Demon Slayer is my personal like modern anime currently being made. That's my favorite right now. I think Tanjiro is your main character, and I think he's just such a likable main character, which you don't always get in animes. I feel like sometimes they can be so self-righteous or just so perfect that you don't really like it. I think he kind of is a really good guy, but like the way he affects other people and the way you're kind of learning about his skills in swordsmanship and becoming a demon slayer and what that involves is really cool. The animation and the different demons that they verse are like really interesting. And then
what I like about this happened a lot in the first season with Demon Slayer that I thought was so cool, but it's not really looked at that much, is like you literally get into like so much depth of the demons, even though they're bad guys. You learn to sympathize with them right before they die because you learn why they are this way, and it's more complex than that. Like this anime is very gray. There's not black and white into it. They're kind of skewing a little bit more away from that in this current season, but that's what I appreciate the first season a lot, was that you really get to go. The villains aren't one-dimensional.
Yeah, like if anyone needs that like spelled out even more, like a lot of times, like when you're versing a villain, you'll kind of get the reason that they ended up becoming a demon, like the plot that led up to it, and so you kind of are like you're at one point you're seeing them as like kind of a villain, someone that you want the main character to defeat ultimately, but then you kind of get this sense of like melancholy at the end when they are, because you saw all that hardship they went through and you understand why they ended up going that way. And the fact that like Tanjiro will like give them a moment of like just like holding their hand or sympathizing with them, that humanizes them again, which is really nice.
Yep.
Haikyuu, I think we talked about a little bit already, just like a great sports anime, like makes you want to go up and do things. And Hinata, the main character, is just so likable. But what's really nice about that show is it literally goes into like every single character, not just on the team Hinata's on, but also on other teams too. So you get this backstories as to why they liked volleyball, what got them into it, and you kind of like get all their different perspectives, and all leading up to like them playing in like their national tournament. And so I just think it's really cool the way they develop characters, and that people, the way they thought maybe in the beginning kind of changes, or what led them to think that. I don't think many other shows are as good at doing that on an like per character as Haikyuu is. And the other one was Jujutsu Kaisen, which I think is probably like the one of the shows that like is just like cool, like it just like hit really hard when you first started it. I like it.
The intro, not the intro, but more of the cut scenes, where they transition to the next scene. It kind of reminds me of Goosebumps a little bit with the whole slime splash they do. But yeah, the style of it is a little different.
Yeah.
And the animation and action itself is probably one of the better ones of the ones we've mentioned so far. It's very interesting one for sure.
Demon Slayer has excellent like fighting scenes as well. But what was I gonna say? The one thing that caught me up with Jujutsu Kaisen was that, like, I'll just call it JJK to be shorter, but I felt like the first episode I watched was like jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try not to give away any plot with it, so I don't want to like list specifics, but if you can get past that first episode where it's kind of like all over the place, it felt like a little cringy at a couple times, and I usually don't kind of say that about anime, but after that it's like great. So just get past the first episode where it's like kind of has to do a lot at once, and then you're good.
This isn't really a spoiler. It is pretty much in the first episode. Like the main hero. He's just like this superhuman, and they don't really explain it.
Yeah, I agree. Like even before he like, I mean, you kind of know that he's just
built different.
Yeah.
that's his plot armor. He's just built different.
Basically. And then like more things happen that makes him even more different. And then
right.
Yeah. Sorry. With being super generic, I'm just trying to avoid spoilers. So
true. Is there any other trending animes that I missed that should be brought up?
I think those were, as far as like ones going on right now, I think I agreed with all of those. Those were my call outs. One that was popular on TikTok, technically not an anime because it's not Japanese, it's French. It's actually like this animated show. I have to mention it because again, it's for the girls, and it was popular on TikTok. Miraculous, The Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. If there are any girls listening to this show, it's a superhero show. And I think what really catches people on it is like this will they won't they tension between the two superheroes, because one of them is in love with like the superhero version of one of the people of the duo, and then the other one is like in love with the normal version of the person, but they don't know each other. So I just wanted to throw it in there.
I'll look into that actually.
It's a real soft one, so I know a lot of the ones we talked about was more like shonen anime, which is kind of more for boys, and it like not being sexist because that's like literally what it's supposed to mean in terms of like action. This one was be more shoujo in terms of like girls, more into romance, I guess, but also some action, obviously, since they're heroes. So.
Yeah, that is the neat thing about anime is it doesn't have to be pow wow, fight the villain, you're dead. There can be a soft side to anime with more of like they focus more on the story element, like Haiku being an example. Yeah. Haiku, sure, it's very that it's the action in terms of them playing volleyball is very appealing to watch, but when they're not playing, there is kind of like that soft side you mentioned where they focus more on the actual characters in the story, and that whole dynamic is like examples of that can be applied in other animes that aren't necessarily action packed.
Yeah, for that reason, I would say that show is actually a really good like entry anime to getting into it. Just because it's so well at appealing to everyone, and I think it's really easy to like get into. Another example would be like Death Note, because that's such a classic, and it's like a thriller because the whole time it's like this. I think they literally describe it in the thing as in their bio as like a cat and mouse game, which it kind of is, like killer versus detective in terms of like who will find out who first. So yeah, that's a good one too.
That's a great starter one. And since we're on the topic of like these older ones. Here's some kind of long-running animes that have been recognized for decades, it seems. This one isn't necessarily been around for over a decade, but it's just one of the top. It's a very top anime that I've really got into. I'm excited for the new season. I think it comes out next year or later this year. Vinland Saga. It's an anime about this guy. He's a kid, and then he grows up as this Nordic Viking warrior, and the action is very intense. The characters they're kind of a little more one-dimensional, but in terms of like true action, this is a great one because the animation is top notch, and you're kind of glued in. One that is kind of more like an alien kind of anime is Parasite, The Maximum. I was mind blown by this. I watched this when I was in college when it first came out, And like it's I like about it because it's easy to watch because it's so short. You don't have to invest hours and hours watching it. You could literally watch the whole series in one day if you have the time. And maybe you're sick or something and you need something to pass the time. You can watch the whole thing, just like with Death Note. That one is about these parasite aliens that come to Earth. It's kind of like that one John Carpenter movie. You know what I'm talking about, where this guy wears these glasses and he sees the aliens that are disguised as humans.
I'm gonna be honest, no.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of like that. If you ever watched this movie, that's what it reminded me of. Or I think it might have been inspired by that movie too. But these parasite aliens, they're like miniature little parasites. And
They Live?
Yes, that's the one. That's the movie. And it's like that, where they go inside humans and they walk around as controlling humans. And then when they need to fight, they mutate into this thing and they kill other people to feed off them. And there's one guy, the main character, the same thing was about to happen to him, but he was able to stop the linkage, and it only affected his arm. So he literally has his own mind, and his arm is controlled by this parasite who he becomes friends with. And the parasite learns and adapts and starts to develop feelings like a human. And then they fight off other parasites that don't like what's going on because they say, hey, this is not how it's supposed to go down. You got to confine by our rules. But the parasite's like, nah, I'm going to hang with this human. So that was a very interesting dynamic. Of course, the big ones, Dragon Ball.
Sure.
Not just Dragon Ball Z. I'm talking about Dragon Ball itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's the great foundation to the show. Dragon Ball Z, my favorite sagas are from the Saiyan saga all the way to the Cell saga. I'm not much of a Buu saga person because...
I was going to say, I like the Buu saga.
I love the action of the Buu saga. I love Super Saiyan 3, and I like the length of the actual saga itself. But to me, the true ending was the defeat of Cell.
Yeah.
Because that's what the whole story is about. Believe it or not, Goku's not the main villain. main hero. Gohan is, because Goku's the main hero in Dragon Ball, and it was a transition from Gohan being the true protagonist and the new savior of Earth. Mm-hmm. That's how it was supposed to end. But Akira Toriyama got pressured by fans and probably his studio to, hey, we want more of this. Make something up. Okay, how about a pink blob? Good, let's get this out. So that's kind of the behind the scenes with Dragon Ball. But either way, the whole series itself is just great. And it's a good foundational piece and has inspired so many other animes. And then the other two that I love to watch is One Punch Man. Mm-hmm. One Punch Man seems pretty one-dimensional, but it's a parody of pretty much like anime itself, because they know how over the top they can be, and they make fun of that a little bit. And I read the manga, and the manga itself is just as good. So I'm excited for new episodes of One Punch Man when the new season comes out. And then one that's more on the lighter end is Erased. Erased is a time travel anime where this guy goes back in time as a kid to stop one of his classmates from being kidnapped and murdered. So that's a good, like, you don't like the action? Well, this is a good story.
Yeah, okay, well then I'll throw out some recs too. My two personal favorite, which I'll list now, is Cowboy Bebop and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yes.
AJ also likes Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop is great. It's like a space western about this group of bounty hunters. And it kind of, each episode is about going after a new bounty, but it also kind of dives deeper into their backstories and what led them to that point. And then kind of how that past comes back to haunt each of them and how it affects them in their current day. And then it's cool because it's set to like a jazzy soundtrack, and the animation style is really awesome and holds up even today. It's beautiful. And based off that, I think the same director of that, Cowboy Bebop, also is in charge of Samurai Champloo, which is about these three people. Two of them are like samurais, and they get indebted to this girl, Fu, and they are on this quest to find the samurai who smells of sunflowers. And so each episode they're kind of getting into new obstacles in the way of trying to find who this person is. And that's set to like a hip-hop soundtrack, and that also has a really unique animation style. And then my next personal favorite would be Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, another fantastic one. It's definitely a longer running one. I think it's got like 5 seasons, but it's just really good in terms of like basically this guy, this kid and his younger brother tried to perform what's called alchemy in this world, where basically you create matter out of other matter. So you could take, for instance, dirt from the ground and make a sword out of it. But the catch is you can't create something from nothing. And so what happens is when their mom passes away, they try to bring her back to life. But the issue is in alchemy, because it's one of the biggest taboos, you can't create a human life, because what's to say what's equal to what a person is and their feelings and their soul. So no spoiler, because you should find this out right away in the show. It goes wrong, and the main character loses his arm, his brother loses his body, and his soul becomes tethered to like the suit of armor. So then the whole story is them trying to, they kind of enter the state alchemists or the military to be able to find a way to get his brother's body back, both of their bodies back. And then they encounter conspiracies and different things that are going on in the government, and bigger things kind of take over as they're trying to figure this out.
Yep. And like the villains involved are like representations of the seven deadly sins.
Yeah, which is really cool to be able to see like what they thought was a seven deadly sin personified. So
yeah, if for those of you who are familiar with Fullmetal Alchemist, but like what's the difference between Fullmetal Alchemist and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood? Brotherhood is more dedicated to the original source material being the manga itself. That's the main difference, and it is longer. So I think if you want my recommendation, hopefully Marcel agrees with this, go with Brotherhood, because you get the more bang for your buck.
Yeah, absolutely. I would skip Fullmetal Alchemist, honestly, because I went back and watched it just to see. It's not worth it.
I couldn't finish it.
The ending was whack too, so like, just don't do it. Just stick to Brotherhood, because you'll like fall in love with the show and how characters develop, and you like literally see them growing up too before your eyes. So it's really cool.
Is there a time skip in Brotherhood?
I don't think so.
Okay, I think there is only a time
remember.
skip in the ending episode or something.
Oh, wait. Oh yeah, no, at the very end,
Yeah.
like they do like a epilogue kind of thing, but I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's pretty common in anime though.
Yeah, and then any others? Trying to think of anything else. Oh, Steins Gate is great. I don't know if you've seen this one.
I haven't.
Okay, well, it's like a time machine anime where these guys create this time machine, or these like scientists create the time machine out of a lab coat, or out of out of a microwave and a cell phone. And so as they're doing it, it kind of starts really easy, and they send like messages to the future and see how that affects things. And then once it hits, I think it's like episode 7 or episode 11, suddenly they see the full impact of all the changes that they were like making that seemed so small, and it becomes like high stakes every single episode. It's got good humor. It can be kind of cringy at times with that, but otherwise good humor, and it like has good like it kind of asks the question of like what sacrifices are worth making sometimes, or what can you do, what as far as like how much do you have to go back, and what's comparing like one bad thing to another bad thing. So it's a great one. I think there's even I think someone was telling me, Priyank was saying that there's even like a Steins Gate 0, because as you get further into the episodes, there's like an alternate ending, and then there was like this time lapse. I'm not going to give anything away, but there's like a potential like time lapse, an area that's not accounted for, and so there's Steins Gate 0 kind of covers all that happens in that area. So, and I think those were my biggest ones. And then also, for shonen anime, Your Lie in April, fantastic. This piano prodigy who like didn't want to play anymore after having like a really, really horrific childhood, being forced kind of into playing piano, meets this violin prodigy, and it kind of goes into getting them back into loving music again, and then having like more friendships in life and being enriched by all that. And it's super duper sad, so if you take the time to watch that, definitely be prepared. I would say it's more of like a girls anime, but if you're into that kind of thing, I suggest anyone can watch it. So
hey, maybe you can watch it for Valentine's Day.
Yes, watch it with your significant other on Valentine's Day, and when they cry into your shoulder, you know you did good. So
there you go. Cool. Unfortunately, we won't be able to make it to our last topic. We're going to talk about our Spotify rap playlist. Maybe we can save that for another day. Cool. Marcella, thank you very much for coming in. She had to drive a little bit of a way to get here. She lives closer to the city while I'm outside the city, and I know it's cold outside and it's rush hour. So appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. As like a big fan of the show, I was so excited to be asked. And hopefully I did a decent job for everybody. And if you heard random popping sounds during this, I'm so sorry. I kept like cracking my knuckles. I didn't realize it till now.
That's all right. You'll get arthritis one way or another. Okay, that wraps up today's show, everybody. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Every little bit helps. I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care.
Bye.